So continuing our conversation on economic development in the capital city, I have with us, we have Lindsay Lyghtle Brushett, Supervisor Planning and Development with the City of St. John's, Tracy Goosey, who's the Manager Development Engineering, City of St. John's, and Justin Ladha, who's the CEO of KMK Capital Inc., and KMK is a major developer in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador and in St. John's. So, Lindsay, perhaps you can just explain to us that coming from that initial proposal right through the development process, what steps are taken to get to that final approval?
Sure. Typically, when a developer or applicant has an idea for a proposal, they'll put something together and they put a request in to meet with the city's development team. It can be a formal or informal meeting, and it's various staff throughout our divisions that come together and meet with the developer. We provide general guidance on how they could make their proposal better and fit within our development regulations to make the process a bit easier for them. Once they have a comprehensive plan put together, they typically make a formal application to the city. They submit that plan, their application, and their supporting documents and studies that they may need to provide. And the staff take that information and review it. So typically an application is reviewed by our development officers and engineers within our division, and it's also farmed out to other divisions within the city, such as transportation, public works, the fire department, and legal, just depending on what the application entails. We compile a comprehensive set of review comments that we provide to the developer. Typically, they provide guidance on how they can make changes to their proposal so it aligns with our development regulations. A revised plan is then submitted and the review process happens again. Typically, that review could happen 2-3 times or more. It really just depends on how extensive and complicated the project may be. Once staff determines that a project meets all of our development regulations and other policies, then it gets development approval.
So as we get to that development approval step, Tracy, what are some of the key factors that your team looks at when considering these proposals?
So when an application comes in, we need to review it against a couple of key documents that we have. We have our development regulations and our municipal plan. We also have our engineering guidelines. So with regards to the development regulations and the municipal plan, we want to make sure that the use, that the zone, that all of the elements in the regulations are met. And then we also give it a technical review against our engineering guidelines. So key things are, can it be serviced with water and sewer? Can it be accessed within our transportation network? So we look at it overall within the existing neighborhood. We look at capacities of the receiving systems. We look at the transportation network, whether that can support the development. And it's not just vehicular access, of course, it's pedestrian access and cyclists and other users as well. We're focusing a lot on our active transportation network. So that's something that we want built in and for developers to consider. We look at whether it fits in the neighborhood, whether it causes any issues with the surrounding neighborhood. In terms of stormwater management, that's a key one. We have a stormwater management policy that says that all stormwater needs to be managed on the site. So these are the main things that we look at. And like Lindsay said, we pull in expertise from different divisions across the city to give it that technical review.
So Justin, you've been developing in the city for quite a number of years, you and your company. What are some of the most significant challenges that you face when you're dealing with getting approval from the city for these projects?
Yeah, I mean, development from start to finish it may sound simple, but it's complicated. And there are a lot of rules and regulations, for good reason, that need to be followed. The biggest challenge when it comes to getting a development approval is ensuring that development, your planned development, can fit and comply within all the rules and regulations. So we look at it in, well, I guess 2 different phases initially. One, does it meet the zone? And if it doesn't meet the zone, what's the likelihood of being able to get a rezoning? we'd meet with the city at that staff. So that's challenge number one. But two, making sure it fits within all the development regulations. So the engineering requirements, Tracy just mentioned stormwater, that's a big one. And that's becoming more and more onerous for good reason because of climate change and things. So the biggest challenge is making sure that development fits within all of that, because sometimes developments are, they're done on relatively thin margins. So some things, if you change something to comply with a regulation, it might render the development unfeasible. That's no good for anybody. So then what we need to do is figure out unique and creative ways to manage any issues that require exceptions to the rules and regulations. And we work hand in hand with the city to ensure that if we need an exception, it's managed so that it doesn't negatively impact anyone. And that's possible, but it takes work.
So, obviously communication amongst all the parties is very important to this. Tracy, what does the city do in terms of communication and communicating with developers to ensure that everybody is working through the process together?
Right, well, like a key thing is our development team meetings, which we offer to anybody who has a potential idea for development to come in before they submit an application. And we host these regularly, weekly. So a developer will come in with an idea, site plan, and we'll pull different staff members from different divisions who have that knowledge and can provide input. So that's where we work out all the bugs before we even get the application. And then throughout the application process, Lindsay was talking about the process, most of our formal comments go back and, through email and whatnot. But we have a lot of informal conversations with developers throughout the process. We field questions, and we're always open. If they have questions, they can come in and meet with us, or we can schedule a virtual meeting. So making sure those lines of communication are open is very important, and making ourselves available for those questions, because sometimes we don't want developers to be confused about what we're asking for. We want to make sure everybody's on the same page. So the best thing is to get that straightened out before there's an application made, but we are always open throughout the whole process.
So that form of communication between staff and the developer is really important. Of course, there's also communication with the public. And as we know, the public also, almost always has some commentary and has some information that they want. Lindsay, so what does the city do in terms of engaging the public in these types of developments?
Sure. So we recently updated our municipal plan and development regulations back in 2021. And with that process, we did extensive public engagement and heard what the public wanted in terms of how they saw their city developing into the future. Those were put in terms of policies and goals within the municipal plan, which then come down into regulations in our development regulations. So how development actually occurs on the ground. Typically, we handle upwards of 200 to 300 applications in a year, and then other informal applications and referrals. So within those, a lot of them are permitted uses, and we just are able to process them because they are reflective of what's in the development regulations and what the public told us they wanted to see for development. In some cases, we have applications that require rezoning, or an application that may be at the discretion of council. And both those types of applications require further public consultation and engagement. So in those cases, we set up public meetings or public hearings, depending on the type of application. And we also do mail-outs and public notifications. So that gives the public a chance to send us commentary or speak at a public meeting on what their thoughts are pertaining to the development. And council uses that input then to consider their decision on the particular application.
So Justin, your application is in, you've gotten commentary back, not only from staff on the regulations, but we also get the public commentary as well. How do unexpected things that arise there really impact your development and your planning of your development as you move forward?
Yeah, well, one thing I think is good, and I think it's a recent change in the last version, is early in, say, rezoning. Because if Lindsay just mentioned, if it's already zoned, then as long as you comply with the regulations, you can go ahead and build. But in the event of a rezoning, And in a lot of cases, particularly in infill, denser developments, which everybody needs, but everybody, we need to manage things properly to protect all stakeholders, is at the beginning of that process, the developer is obligated to engage with neighboring properties and property owners in the area. So we've done that via email and mail outs, and then you ask for feedback. And then you got to take that feedback seriously. So we sit down with our team in the office, look at all that feedback. Sometimes you don't get much, sometimes you get a lot. Put it in different buckets and say, now, how can we deal with this feedback? How can we make changes to the development while not compromising the financial feasibility of the development, but to accommodate some of the concerns? And to the extent we can, we'll do that, because why wouldn't you? You want to be a good neighbor and you want the least amount of opposition. So getting that early is great. And then when we come to the city staff, we say, look, this is the feedback we've received, and here's how we've dealt with it. Now, will everybody be 100% satisfied? You know, Mr. Mayor, that's not possible, but hopefully we can do better.
Yeah, so when there is an issue that arises like that, does the city then help the developer in kind of how they deal with those issues as you move forward?
Yeah, so we work with the developer. I mean, all the communication that comes back from any of these public forums are shared with the developer, and we try to work through them as best we can. Yeah.
Yeah, because there's always issues, and there's areas which have increased restrictions and increased requirements, like heritage areas. So, of course, heritage planning is a big part of this as well, right?
Yes, and we have a bylaw that specifically outlines the heritage areas within the city, the different design requirements for those for facades of buildings.
And we also have a built heritage experts panel that is there as well to give advice on these things. Justin, what do you see as the future in development in the near future? Where do you see the biggest market for you in terms of as you're moving forward?
Yeah, I think this answer will come of no surprise, because it's the case nationally, and is housing. When I refer to housing, there's certainly opportunities in, building houses and selling them. But the biggest supply-demand imbalance, lots of people have heard me talk about this, is in rental apartments. There's a national shortage, a severe shortage, and that shortage, statistically, St. John's is one of the worst in the country in terms of demand outstripping supply. So, we're in many sectors, and in all sectors actually, and we'll continue to be active. But the biggest area for growth in the near term and medium term would be purpose-built rental apartments.
Yeah, and we're also seeing too that there's a change in the condominium market is not what it was before, and there's so many. It's kind of one of those things that's changing so quickly that it's a challenge keeping up with it.
Yeah, it's a challenge, and condominiums are challenging for a litany of reasons. But the beauty of purpose-built rental apartments is nobody has a large amount of capital tied up in a down payment.
Right.
So there's more flexibility. They don't need to worry about condominium fees or special assessments for roofs. They pay the rent every month, and they can leave when they want.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. This is a complicated and complex area, but it's something that everybody hears about from time to time, and I'm sure the public is very pleased to understand what happens inside these applications. So thank you very much. And that's it for us this week. Good evening.